So Celtic take on RB Leipzig in the Champions League later on this evening, a game that Celtic really need to get at least a point from if they want to do anything in this competition and in European competition going forward over the next couple of months. Celtic do need to get a couple of points on the board in terms of just points, but in terms of away points as well. These are games that Celtic are going to need to take advantage of if they possibly can. In this video, I'm going to be talking to Phil Bonney, Phil Bundesliga Bonney, Bundesliga_Phil is where you can get him on Twitter if you want to follow him along and some of the stuff that he does on the Bundesliga. We get into Marco Rose, the changes that he's made to the club since he's taken over, Timo Werner since he's moved back, the key man Christopher Nkunku up front, and how Celtic could potentially damage this RB Leipzig side as well. This video and every video across the channel is in association with the OneFootball app. The OneFootball app is your one-stop shop for all your football goodness. If you want live scores, results, team news, transfer news, anything that you need on any team in any league is available in the OneFootball app now. And on top of all these great features, they also have one live stream on a Saturday of a Serie A match, as well as full match highlights on their app exclusively on the OneFootball app. Now, if you want to get the app and you want to support the channel, download the OneFootball app using the link in the description below. Now, very happy to say that I'm joined by Phil Bundesliga Bonney on today's show as we look ahead to Celtic against RB Leipzig in the Champions League. RB Leipzig at home for this game. Phil, thanks very much for joining me, first of all.
Absolute pleasure.
RB Leipzig are a big club in the last number of years specifically, and they come with a big reputation. But is it fair to say that the RB Leipzig reputation might precede itself slightly when it comes to this current setup and this current squad over the last maybe 18 months or so?
It's a squad that's going through transition and has been ever since Julian Nagelsmann left them. What was bizarre was at the end of last season, they won the DFB Cup for the first time, and they looked to be on an absolute high. Things seemed to be going all in the right direction. And then it wasn't. I personally was one of the people, I'm having a bit of a nightmare this season. I tipped Leipzig and Leverkusen to be two of the sides that would push Bayern this season. Whilst Leipzig haven't completely imploded, certainly Leverkusen have. So as you can see, football experts can also be undone by football, which is, I suppose, one of the reasons why we love the game so much. Is you never know what you're going to get. You can lose 5-0 or win 5-0. But they have been going through a transition after the loss of Timo Werner. They changed everything around. He went off to Chelsea. They moved things around. They moved the coaches around, of course, as well. And now he's back and he's finding his way back in again. And it looks as if with the change to Marco Rose, he's built up his sort of strike partnership with Christopher Nkunku that they had, that was there. They did know each other from before. And you know, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. And last weekend they had a couple of goals each.
Yeah, it's slightly terrifying for Celtic that RB Leipzig went through this sort of period of not scoring many goals, Timo Werner not really hitting the target, the Timo Werner of the Chelsea turning up for RB Leipzig, and then suddenly they put 4 past their opponents at the weekend, and Timo Werner's on absolute point as well. Just an aside point before we get into Leipzig in general, that does seem to be a little bit of a sort of a uniqueness when it comes to the Bundesliga, that it's very hard to predict what's going to happen one season from another, because Celtic played Bayer Leverkusen in the Europa League last season and they were absolutely exceptional and they were fighting for, you know, they were one of the best teams in Germany, and then suddenly they're in relegation spots this season. And if you think about Leverkusen, are actually a prime example of a club that really does fluctuate quite often when it comes to their position in the Bundesliga. Borussia Mönchengladbach, probably similar enough. What is it about the German Football League that causes such fluctuation? Even if you look at some of the managers that might do brilliantly at the likes of Dortmund and take over another club, and suddenly they're fighting for their lives as a manager and their career. What is it about the Bundesliga that causes that, do you think?
You know, if I could put a timer on that or payment on that, I expect I'd have a pretty high-powered job at one of these sites. The thing that's I find particularly bizarre about the Bundesliga is that you have this, sometimes you have this like 1 year effect where someone like Tedesco comes into Leipzig, everything goes right. He picks them up from the depression that they were under after Nagelsmann left and Jesse Marsch came in, and just things weren't working for him. Although I think it was a bit of a poison chalice for him when he came in as to be the man to follow Nagelsmann. And then all of a sudden, start of the season, nothing works. And it's been the same for Gerardo Seoane as well. He's got some real issues. He's got a difficult game for him if he gets that far. I mean, we were having a production meeting about this coming weekend just before I spoke to you, and a couple of the lads there were saying, well, you know, it might be the new coach in charge. I think the thing about the Bundesliga is, with the exception of Bayern, of course, Bayern are always the exception. Most of the others are fairly level with one another, and then things like daily form actually really has an effect. You talked about Leverkusen; they've pretty much got the same squad that they had last season. Okay, Alario's gone, but he wasn't getting much game time. Schick can't buy a goal for love nor money at the moment. And players like Moussa Diaby, everybody knows him now. He had a really big sort of breakthrough season last season, and they know his speed and his abilities now. So maybe they're keeping a closer eye on him when teams play him. But I think it's also, in the Bundesliga, we have players like Christopher Nkunku, or last season like Erling Haaland. The focus very much falls on them, and before you know it, you're having to change the system again, because, like with Timo Werner, they've left for the Premier League, and of course money is for all of us. I mean, if somebody came in and offered me a job for 3 times what I'm getting now, I'd certainly have to think about it. It's one of those things in the Bundesliga that top can always beat bottom. I mean, if you look at Augsburg, who are perennial strugglers, they have beaten Bayern and Leverkusen in the last, well, and Schalke as well, but in the last 3 games, which is quite extraordinary for a side that have just got their best first 8 games of the season ever behind them, including those 2 wins. Okay, they won against Bremen as well. It's a strange league in those terms, or a good league in those terms, because you can go to a game where your side is taking on Bayern and you can still win. But the gap to the top between Bayern and everyone else is of course massive. But Bayern, of course, not the problem for Celtic this week. Leverkusen, Leipzig have changed over the years. It's not widely taken on outside of the Bundesliga, but they are amongst fans who would consider themselves traditional fans. The whole setup with the involvement of the fizzy drink manufacturer is a big issue in Germany. Lots of people are not happy about having a side that seems, in their eyes, to skip by the rules, to have backdoors in to organise things. Personally, I think it keeps it fresh. But I'm not the person who makes the laws. You know, you can only look at the team on the field, and I suppose that's really why you're talking to me today. Is you want to know how Leipzig are going to square up against Celtic?
Yeah. So you mentioned Christopher Nkunku there, and the sort of the turnover of player in the Bundesliga, because the Premier League has just this gulf when it comes to money. And Nkunku is a player that's on his way out of the Bundesliga. Essentially, if you listen to the reports, he's essentially a Chelsea player as soon as the summer transfer window opens. What? No,
I think he'll be gone at Christmas.
You think he'll be gone that quickly?
Yeah, Chelsea have just come in. He's got a 60 million release clause somewhere, but they really don't want to wait until the summer.
Okay.
According to sources, he's already had a medical and is pretty much agreed on terms and everything. But whether or not he'll last, I think they'll try and prize him away at Christmas. So I think you could actually find him gone by the new year.
So that makes the point even more pressing then. He's a key man for Leipzig. He scored at the weekend, but it was from the penalty spot. He also missed one as well. What kind of player should we be expecting here? He pretty much joins in with the forward line, although he starts in the midfield. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those players that's got free license to swap sides, go where he likes, because where he is, things happen. He's as equally good at finishing as setting up. Along with Timo Werner, the two of them have worked together in the past and are now starting to click, because, of course, with Marco Rose coming in, a Leipzig born and bred coach, there's been another change, but he seems to have got that new coach bounce working again. But Nkunku is definitely the danger man. I mean, in as much as the midfield, the injury to Dani Olmo, who's done his cruciate, is a massive loss for them. That, in my books, in a game like this, is certainly a very big negative for Leipzig. Without Olmo pulling the strings, okay, they've got other players in the centre. As you say, Nkunku can be in there and do that, as can Szoboszlai. But they'll certainly miss Dani Olmo.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of let's say the strengths and weaknesses of this side, so Celtic's strengths and weaknesses would be they're very, very good at pressing. They press hard. They control the game. They're a fast-paced side, but their weakness would be defensively. They can be suspect when it comes to passing out from the back. Does that sound like something that RB Leipzig would be happy to hear?
Well, yeah, obviously, but the in reverse, the weak line for me is the back line for Leipzig. They've had a few wobbly performances. Mo Simakan was taken off at the weekend by Rose for various reasons, or lots of different reasons. So I think actually it's kind of two similar sides meeting. So they'll both be aware, obviously, that the other side's strengths and weaknesses. I must say, I am not a Celtic expert, so I couldn't tell you how Celtic are lined up, because I pretty much only concentrate on the Bundesliga. That's my area. But I think they'll come into it. But you've got no points and 1 point. It's a massive game for both of you, and it's still not a done deal with the way the points are. Either of you could still progress. So coming down to they've got a few players. They've got Lucas Klostermann's out as well in the defense. For a long time, Leipzig were very good going forward. Their wing backs with that Angelino Klostermann going forward were part of that sort of wave of Leipzig attack. But in the other direction, it was never as strong. And I personally still think that's the same thing. They do have frailties at the back.
They find themselves sort of mid-table in the Bundesliga this year because of their poor start to the season. But obviously, we've mentioned the change to Marco Rose. What's changed on the field since Marco Rose has taken over?
I think he's done a clever thing in as much as he's let people play where they think they play best. So the whole thing was getting Werner and Nkunku to fire again on all cylinders. But he's really not made that many changes. He has been giving runouts to some of the younger players, like Hugo Novoa. They've got some very good young talent in there. Again, Konrad Laimer is a miss. Just had a quick sneaky peek at my list. Konrad Laimer being out as well in the midfield is another big miss for them. David Raum has been a very good acquisition. So in a way, I think it is all recently. It has been part of Rose's introduction to Leipzig and bringing in the players that were there for him to use, like Raum. So really, I don't think he's actually fiddled too much, other than use the players in the positions where they are more comfortable.
Mm-hmm. And what is it about the defense that has frailties? Is it playing out from the back that they struggle with? Is it pace in behind? Or what? If I were to ask you how Celtic can get at this Leipzig defense, how would you say?
I think the pressure thing is it's space and pressure is how you're going to get onto them. They need to, as soon as the defense has the ball, like you say, high pressing. is where mistakes are made and balls are played inaccurately. That would probably be about the one.
And then the other way. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, after Upamecano's departure at the back, they've still been looking for a very effective back line.
And then going the other way, I guess, one thing that you probably associate with the RB project in general, be that Leipzig or Salzburg or even New York, it's a lot of vertical, quick passing, get forward very quickly. Is that what Marco Rose is doing with Leipzig at the minute still? Is it very much that sort of get it forward as quickly as possible, Jesse Marsch style, or is it a little bit more methodical build up?
It's get the ball to Christopher Nkunku and see what happens. That's a lot of what goes on there. No, they are adaptable and they can do both. It's not just what the Germans call kick and rush. It's not just route one and spray the balls out for Werner to chase down. They do have ball players in the centre of the park. But as I say, the big thing is the miss Olmo and Lima in the centre of midfield. That's for me where if Celtic are going to beat them, that's where they have to beat them is in the midfield, because I think overall that is the weaker spot.
Okay, interesting. That does give me a little bit of hope going into this game, because Celtic's midfield would be one of the stronger elements of their side, and they very much flood the midfield with a lot of bodies as well. So that's something to keep an eye on, I guess. And just before we finish up and I'll let you go, Timo Werner is a name that most people know at this point, and it was a little bit of a joke or a laughing stock or someone to point at as maybe not the player that was originally advertised when he came to the Premier League, I guess. What's he been like since he's returned to Leipzig? You're seeing highlights of him scoring again, so that's good. Is he still sort of the frustrating character at times where he might have 10 chances and take 2 of them?
Well, I don't know. He's just scored his 100th goal for Leipzig. He's been.
I mean, that's pretty good.
The first player for Leipzig to score 100 goals in the Bundesliga. Obviously, they haven't been there that long. It's kind of the shotgun technique. If you fire off enough pellets, one of them's going to hit. And everybody knows that Timo Werner is, he'll chase down and fall over quite often, but he'll also score some great goals. I suppose it's quality and return, really. I mean, in the Premier League, everyone's expecting you to score every single goal that goes in. Whereas maybe chances created is more important as long as the goals are still going. I mean, one in 5 or 1 in 3 really doesn't have a negative effect if you're still winning the game 3 or 4-0. But perhaps not so. His way of just his way of speaking and how he is makes him come over as quite sort of snooty, I suppose. In some ways, I really don't see him interviewed in English very often, but I know he does do interviews in English. But he's appreciated by the people of Leipzig. Let's put it that way. The Leipzig fans love him. And I could see. I could see why he's sort of been a sort of figure of fun, as it were. But for years and years and years, Ian Robben at Bayern was always the diver supreme, but holds a very special place in many people's hearts. I think Werner is probably happier at Leipzig than he was at Chelsea. I think that plays a big role. I mean, it's a club he knows. He fits straight in. I don't know. I mean, this is just on a personal level. I don't know about you, but I find some players. Every player knows that they're the best player ever, or thinks they're that they're going to come to a big club and that they're not going to be sat on the bench week in, week out, because there are other players that think exactly the same, that are outperforming them in training and producing the goods on a Saturday afternoon. And I think, you can't blame Timo Werner for being one of them. You get a big offer, turns your head from Chelsea, and off you go. A la Christopher Nkunku. Will he blossom and come on there? I don't know. But, the Bundesliga is a great place for some of the better players to really hone their talent.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes a happier player is a better player as well. So that comes into it as well. Some players just don't, whatever it is, they just don't fit in, or they don't settle, and that comes off on the football pitch as well. Just as we finish up, then I know you don't know too much about Celtic per se, but if you were to make an educated guess on how Leipzig are playing at the minute and their form in the league, do you think they'll have too much firepower for a team like Celtic tonight, or how do you see it going?
Over the years, the whole Champions League thing has got so much closer. Home advantage can be a massive thing, especially post-pandemic or in this lull in the pandemic that we seem to be having. But at the same time, motivation on the day can count for a lot. I mean, I hate to say it, I kind of think this one might be a draw. It smacks to me as the possibility of a draw, but you know, if you'd have said Germany are going to beat Brazil 7-1 in the World Cup, I'd have probably laughed as well. So anything can happen. Anything can happen. It's like you said yourself, the Bundesliga is very terribly hard to predict a lot of the time, and I think the Champions League can be like that as well. You have. I mean, Frankfurt were brilliant last night, and the guy running the show for them is nearly as old as me. I mean, he's 38, nearly 39-year-old Makoto Hasebe kept Harry Kane in his pocket all night.
Yeah, this it is a hard game to predict, especially with the way that both sides are playing. But in my hope, I hope that Celtic come away with a win. But I think we're going to get goals. I think that's the main thing that we're going to look at.
As a football fan, I always hope for goals. If it ends up a 3-3 draw or a 2-2 draw or a 1-1 draw, that's a lot better than a 0-0 Phil game. So I'm with you. I hope that football's the winner always. And as a Bundesliga fan, then obviously, you know, it's good for us if Leipzig do well. But at the same time, you want to see a good game of football, and I think it'll be watch the midfield for this one. That's my tip. I think it's going to be settled in the midfield. It's who's strongest, and it might just be physical as well down there, because they've got a couple of players that like to get stuck in as well, and obviously Celtic have a couple of players that can move it around in the midfield. I just finish off the cup of tea, and yeah, I wouldn't be without hope if I was a Celtic fan tonight, and I wouldn't be without hope if I was a Leipzig fan either. I think it's it's going to be a close one, which will hopefully be exciting.
Yeah, hopefully. Phil, if people want to get you on Twitter, it's Bundesliga_Phil. And I'm sure if people are wanting to get up to speed on anything to do with the Bundesliga, drop Phil a follow on Twitter. Phil, thanks very much.
Enda, absolute pleasure. All the best for both teams tonight. Let's hope they do us all proud. And it's an old cliche, but may the best team win.